With Battlefront 2 being one of the top contenders for Star Wars fans' favorites, as well as the #1 selling Star Wars game at the time, you would think a third one would be on the way because success makes you do sequels, right? Well, we were close. We were about that close. Due to, let's say, internal conflict, the game's plug was pulled when it was about 99% complete. OCD or not, that hurts! All I needed was some bug testing and it would have been in our hands! Then one eventful day, Mickey bought Star Wars, shut down LucasArts, and the rights to a new Battlefront game were handed over to EA. I honestly haven't paid much attention to EA's downfall with the gaming community. The company was in my vocabulary of recognizable game companies, but they didn't have anything in particular that I wanted. With a few exceptions, even though they were only published by EA. Until they announced a new Battlefront game, but it would be more of a reboot, and it was going to be done by the DICE team, the guys who made Battlefield. My experience with Battlefield is shorter than a list of good things about Attack of the Clones, so if you're expecting me to make some comparisons on them, don't hold your breath. My brother, on the other hand, has played both and says that Battlefront is basically Battlefield with Star Wars skins and sounds. So, there's that. As time went on, we learned that the game wouldn't have a true single-player campaign. No! Won't have all the classes, maps, and heroes from number 2. No! And that the other half of the game is locked behind DLC.
This deal is getting worse all the time.
Oh, and there was an open beta for it, and it looks like the updates are actually fixing things and adding stuff you don't have to pay for. Yeah, I'm as shocked as you are. Sadly, the updates sometimes broke more things than they fixed, but I'm getting ahead of myself. And now that the sequel has been announced and looks to be everything that this game should have been, it hardly feels like I should be reviewing it, but I made my promise to it. I'm going to go through with it. Plus, there's a lot of replay moments I want to share, and trust me, it's worth it on that merit alone. And I hope you guys like the Rogue Squadron music, because I'm doing it again for the same reasons as last time. So with that out of the way, let's see what the reboot has to offer. Right off the bat, you get to play as Vader while the game is installing. Yeah, even if you have the physical copy. And who wouldn't take this over watching a loading screen? The offline mode is basically used for training for the online mode. There, I brought it up. There is no point talking about them or the collectibles, as you'll soon forget about them once you dive into the realm of the online modes that have... Well, it did have 9 modes, but then they gave us a free one, so you have 10 modes, not counting the ones you have to buy. And I'm just going to say that I won't be covering the DLC, at least not in depth, since I don't have any of them. Though there are times where you can play on some of the maps with the new heroes for free, so that's actually kind of surprisingly nice of them. The modes you get by default are Standard, Capture the Flag, Why Can't I Find the Droids I'm Looking For?, Making TIE Fighter Noises, Hands Off My Pod! Something similar to the old Battlefront games, Luke Dies First, Walkers on Parade, 1 versus Targets, and it doesn't get intense until the last checkpoint. The ones I find myself glued to are Fighter Squadron, Can Just One Person Cover Me?, Clash of Titans, Hold Your Positions! And the bad guys get all the cool toys. The main planets are Tatooine, Hoth, Endor, Jakku, but 29 years before Episode 7, and Solist. Some of you are probably thinking, Solist? That was never in the movies. Well, it was briefly mentioned in one line in Return of the Jedi, but when I first heard about it, I had a small heart attack, because anyone familiar with Rogue Squadron on the N64 remembers this nightmare. Show of comments, who else hated that mission? Yes, there are more maps in the DLC, but like I said, I'm not touching them. After each mode is finished, you'll be rewarded on your performance, which then turns into currency and experience points. Getting higher levels allows more stuff to be bought, like weapons, cards used as specials and abilities, customizations, traits for bonus effects, and emotes. I love so many of these. And for a little extra challenge, they added in the HUD contracts so you can unlock more, but unfortunately a lot of it is locked behind DLC. Instead of ammo, you just make sure you don't overheat your weapon, but if you do, you can perform a cooling flush by pushing the square when the ball is in the highlighted section, and you'll start shooting again in no time. But fail, and you'll burn your hand and you'll have to wait even longer for it to cool down. There's also traits that give us sort of kill streak rewards depending on which one you have, such as being able to sprint without getting caught on the radar. Oh yeah, and you can still dodge roll in this game by pushing circle twice and left or right on the controller. The only real classes to return are simple blasters, snipers, kind of, and shotguns. Considering how powerful smart rockets are in the game, I'm thankful they are only put in as a special item. If they were as common as snipers, we'd be in for some real trouble, as you almost can't go around a corner without getting picked off. That may sound like every other FPS online multiplayer game, but here it's almost a science. Speaking of which, the power-ups are just lying around waiting for you to use, but it's random as to which one you'll get, and knowing how and when to use it makes possible difference every. That's right, Solo. Stay in the circle. Just a quick little note, I like the little detail that only Imperials get probe droids and Rebels get R5 droids. Also scattered around the areas are lightning bolts that give your special card an extra use. Unlike your one extra card and one you use for a jetpack, cause who doesn't love jetpacks, these not only take time to recharge, but have limits. Which is almost a joke as there are a lot of them you can pick up, and you can even buy more in the store. The other two major power-ups to get their own icons are vehicles for extra destruction and the hero coin. If you can actually get one before the campers know where it spawns, you can pick which character can get you a good KDR, as basically all of them have instant kill attacks like Force Choke, Lucky Shot, Force Push, and Chain Lightning. The game was updated to give them kill streaks as well, because why not make them even more terrifying? My favorites are Luke because of the speed, jumping, and lightsaber. Also love how you can deflect the lasers to where you want them to go. Vader also for the deflection, Force Choke, and lightsaber throw. And the Emperor. This is how I see people use the Emperor. I'm so weak, please don't kill me. This is how I play as the Emperor. Unlimited power! Do not underestimate the powers of the Emperor, or suffer a loss you will. So with the basics out of the way, let's transition to the positives. It's hard for me to put into words what I enjoyed the most in this game. It's really more of the things you can do, rather than what the game is. Let me see if I can paint you a better picture. Those kind of moments where you can get in a TIE interceptor, shoot down an X-Wing, and then nosedive into a group of enemies you can barely see, take them out, and barely pull up in time? Yeah, it's basically that kind of game where you just play around with everything while going after the objective. Seeing what kind of kills you can make, getting past enemy lines, setting up traps, and using iconic characters to the best of their abilities. The old series had that too, but there are moments I've had here that far surpass anything I've ever done in those titles. It can be as simple as reenacting those big screen battles, or making robot chicken quotes everywhere. How about a little fire, Scarecrow? Tickle like a man, Snowflake! I can't hold your hand anymore, Vader. A hand I gave you, I might add. Wow, this lightning really hurts. Like really bad. I know it's not cool, but I'm thinking about playing dead. Or being the one that takes down a walker with the snowspeeder, winning the match for your team. Trying to get the cargo, but you know you'll die, so you leave them a little present. Flying in an X-Wing and see Boba Fett flying around. Or one of my favorite moments, seeing someone use a jetpack only to get caught in a force choke, and then let go into a bottomless pit. I mean, can you do this in another game? Even just testing out new weapons can be enjoyable. Can I try that? I like this. It's the game itself that creates those special kind of moments, and even more so when the team actually works like a team, taking out the hero ship and fighter squadron, defending the pods, protecting the cargo runner, and teaming up with other powerhouses to get the job done, and knowing when to help them out. For me, you must want to win. A big factor in your enjoyment in the game is whether or not you'll be on a good team or see ya suckers. Yes, it's like that for practically every online team-based game, but there's no in-game chat on the PS4 except through parties, and hardly anyone uses them for this game. If you're lucky, you'll find some players that actually know what they're doing. Here's my favorite example. Heroes versus villains. Villains meet up in a spot and just go around in a circle. So you have a group of the most heartless killers in a room going, ring around the rosies, a pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all wreck Luke. Also, I want this to be a note for players. Stop picking Luke and then running off on your own. Do that in the other modes, but not here where it actually turns into 3 against none because stupid here thought they could fight a whole army on their own. Lesson over, moving on. Sadly, there's not that many maps in the main game itself, DLC not being counted, but I don't get tired of seeing these same places because I always get lost and captivated by the beauty and detail they put in and make me forget that I'm in a— Oh shoot! Indoor by far is the best looking stage. Play this level in 1080 HD if you can, and just look at how unbelievably gorgeous it is! Not enough? Then watch the thinner trees blow up and fall down! It's a bit stiff, but somehow beautiful. In a wrong but kind of cool way. I get a level of immersion that no other Star Wars game has given me before. Even just seeing the wildlife acting naturally gives me a level of depth that the BattleFront series just didn't have in the past. Despite those games having more content, the developers said that they wanted to get a true feel of the Star Wars series. So they went to where the movies were filmed, and whether you love or hate this game, you have to admit that they did a fantastic job coding in these environments. I still look at this as the most realistic looking game I've played yet. Now the real world looks like Phantom Menace on the PS1. Even if it came out in '93, it still would have looked ugly. The updates can unfortunately cause some problems, but for right now, let me go over what they did right. I used to hate Hero Hunt, as the person who took down the hero or villain gets to become the next one, which means you could have done all the work and someone steals your kill at the last second. But it was updated to have a point system, so now it's whoever has the most gets to be the one-man army. And their points reset so they can't be picked right away, and as long as no one picks Bosk or Luke, you're fine. I really don't have anything too detailed to say about Supremacy and Walker Assault. The only thing that bothers me is that they take about 15 to 20 minutes to finish. Otherwise, they've been consistently enjoyable from the launch. I can't really explain why I have so much fun with them. Maybe it's because the maps are larger, more people can play, you can use heroes and fighters, power-ups are everywhere, and there hasn't been a culprit that kills the fun of the modes, unlike some other suspects you'll see later on. It's best to try a few rounds of it yourself, and hopefully you'll understand why it can be a little hard to put down. Fighter Squadron still has some issues, but man can I throw away some hours here. The controls and dynamics of the spacecrafts themselves feel almost too natural for me after I've changed the default control settings. I just don't get enough of this until we get to the negatives. Quick tips, always get the refresh, and there was an update that gives you a meter for how long you can lock onto someone. Always be mindful not to let your lasers or targeting computer overheat. Sadly, it still has two big issues for me, but they did at least fix one of the biggest problems in the mode. The Rebellion Party pretty much has the advantage for a reason I'll go over after the transition, but the Millennium Falcon was a case of, did you hire any playtesters for this? Let me ask you guys a question. What do you call something OP on a team that's already OP? Oh, seriously, look at this! All you had to do was get the refresh item, keep pushing shields, and not even a fleet of Star Destroyers could touch you! Case in point, if the Millennium Falcon crashes into the Slave 1, they both die, and that's completely fair. But if the Falcon has shields on, it could get away with barely a dent. Fortunately, an update finally fixed this problem. But it feels like for every update that fixes something, they add something else that ruins another mode. Are we sure EA wasn't acquired by Nexon? I don't even know if I can list them all, but I'm definitely going over the ones I've noticed and anything else that comes to mind. While it's comforting that they are trying to take care of the game, it almost feels like they don't really test out what they put out. If you thought only having a handful of maps, the DLC, and the lack of an offline campaign were the biggest problems with the game, you're only half right. Let's begin with Fighter Squadron. On the Jakku map, you could spawn right into a hazard that you had no time to get away from! I think they did fix this a while ago, but that should never have happened in the first place. Getting spawned into a bad position is almost common in most FPSs, but when it's something like this, you just have to wonder who allowed it to happen. And just think, we're only getting started. A feature they added in was picking up some extra gunships like TIE bombers and B-wings. I will say this before I vent. I like how they tried to add extra content to help freshen up the mode, and they can get you some pretty good scores. Those do not even come close to the two problems they present. First off, some of them are located in areas where they can't pull up in time, and some pilots will share their fate. Yes, you can get them if you go in at a certain angle, but that's not excusable in the middle of a battle, as you may get shot down before you reach it. Same with putting the hero coin in that spot. It's a trap if I've ever seen one. Oh, and speaking of which, it's actually very possible to have your team get spawn trapped by them while the guy who picked them up just flies around and picks up more. Not Wizard, Dice Team.
I'm bringing it back!
I'd also like to give my 2 Republic credits on the shields. It basically grants you immunity to lasers, so lock-on missiles are your best hope of taking down a fighter. But missiles can be dodged by turning with the boost or using the evasive maneuvers on the D-pad. The Rebels have 3 ships that have shields, while the Imperial only has 1, and it's the one you have to pony up the moolah for. Previously, A-Wings had shields, and then they replaced them with the boost, which used to be terrible, but now it feels a little better. TIE Interceptors used to have missiles, but now they have laser barrage, which prevents your lasers from overheating for a while, which means TIE Interceptors are only good for taking out A-Wings, while TIE Fighters have missiles, so don't use TIE Interceptors. Personally, I feel the shield should only repel a certain amount of firepower, instead of refresh and live forever! Or even have them as a power-up itself. I understand wanting to make the vehicles feel different, but shields clearly have the advantage when it feels like they mimic a Starman. Slave 1 and the Millennium Falcon now feel like a piece of junk. It's tough for them to slip through areas and get power-ups, and I'm just saying I don't think any of the hero ships should be able to get them. The health they get is pathetic, yet the DLC ships get about half, and just give off the impression of being a huge slow-moving target, while the DLC upgrades are really good at camouflaging with the other fighters. You will have to look up some advanced techniques if you want to even stand a chance against some of the players that are left. Strangely, I still enjoy this mode a lot, and it's nice to see that I'm not the only one. But I can't take how the X1 camps the health and Red 5 gets shields and health. There is no balance in the Force. Anyway, we've spent enough time here, so let's move on. Drop Zone was enjoyable and really made the team focus, but then they made it so that whoever claims a pod gets a power-up and basically wins the match from that point onwards. Oh, and that's the only way you can get a power-up in this mode now. I used to not care about cargo as it was a camper's paradise, but after giving it a little more time, I really started to enjoy it, making those do-or-die plays, and when you've got it and are running back to the base with no one around, you can't help but hum. But then there was an item in the DLC that could disable your enemy's blasters in its range, leaving you defenseless and dead. Still indifferent? Then how about another DLC item that stuns the enemy in place? And do I really need to say anymore? How stupid does that sound? To have paid for items that basically win you the match, and there's very little, if anything, that can counter them. That's a common occurrence in DLC. Then my point still remains valid. Stupid when it first started, and it will always be idiotic. When I see these items used over and over again, I can't stay in the match anymore. Moving on, but on that same note, 9 Nub. Ugh. Rapid Blaster, Proximity Mine, Pulse Cannon, and the kitchen sink in the shape of a turret. But he's not the worst case defender. I used to think he was, especially after seeing that. Didn't know he was a Force user. But no, that goes to Lando. First off, let me say that I'm glad to finally see him in the BattleFront series, and I love that you can do this at the push of a button. Honestly, after seeing 9 Nub and Greedo get in, I was starting to think we were going to get prune-faced before we got Lando. Good to be wrong sometimes. But then he was somehow able to reduce a villain's health from about 110% to 0 in about 3 seconds! I think the OP shot got fixed since I haven't seen it recently, but now I'm certain that the worst case offender is actually the updates, as I don't believe they actually test them out before putting them out. Don't believe me? Then get ready to laugh and wince at the same time. I was able to pick Red 5, but instead the game said, you have chosen Exotic Butters. And it still says I'm Red 5! I know it's DLC now and not a free update, but how could it not tell the difference back then? The game says Vader died. Then who's that, his Force ghost? Why are the options for the Rebel features and the Imperial customizations? Is my guy planning to defect? How did the Emperor get up there? Scratch that. How did Luke get up there? That shouldn't be possible at all. Apparently, glitches are stronger than the Force. Why is this laser frozen in midair? Is Kylo Ren here? When did Vader get the ability to have me clip through the floor? Is that in the special Super Duper edition? Why are there so many dead bodies hanging around for so long? TK421, you're fired. Where is Leia? Why is Orson Krennic here when he's not up there? And why does it look like he's on the Rebellion side? What Jedi mind games are you guys playing with us? Why does it say it's a draw? Does that look like a draw to you? Why did it always remove my Triton selected blaster? That made no sense! Exclamation mark! I can't wait to try out my new ATST! What the... Dude, where's my chicken walker? And what exactly happened here? It's like Vader said, oh right, I'm supposed to be locked in a struggle. Why does the pulse cannon feel like it has crooked sight on from time to time? Wait, it says we lost, but we won? Make up your mind! And I'm sure there's dozens more. But one thing that could cause an issue was that on the PS4 version, the L1, R1, and triangle button would sometimes push themselves. And then I was informed that it was because of the touchpad. I'm happy to make this correction so I'm not giving out false information, but in my defense, 1. I don't recall ever coming into contact with the touchpad when that happened, but whatever. 2. I am glad you can turn it off, but why is it set to be a default anyway? Think about this for a second, guys. How is this a practical option in the first place? Sliding your finger or thumb across the touchpad takes more time and effort than simply pushing one of the buttons to activate it. So who thought that was a good idea? Once again, it feels like a lack of proper testing. You know what sounds like the biggest joke of all? I still had fun with this game. Probably more than I should have. I'm not upset that it wasn't like the previous games, because I can enjoy it for what it is. Most of the time, I freaking hate scatterguns. A number of these are minor and can be looked back on and laughed at. But then there are times where you have to really wonder, how could you let something like this slide? Fortunately, modes like Supremacy, Walker Saw, and Heroes vs. Villains haven't had the biggest issues, or at the least they've been fixed right away. I have this as more of a casual game. You know, play some of the modes for maybe an hour a day sometimes. The online mode is so addictive to me. But once the servers die, or even sooner, when BattleFront EA2 hits, there's really no more of a reason to play this game anymore. Unless some of the better modes don't come back, or it's somehow worse. I can't help but admire the little touches like the scream in the Emperor's Force Rush, or seeing the Death Star monster. But just how loud do I have to be to make my point clear about the problems that still haven't been fixed, like the spawn trapping or updates that don't feel properly tested? The single player stuff is scoff-worthy. And yeah, they did add a few of the modes for an offline experience, but you know the old saying, better late than never? There's also too little, too late. I'll probably be playing this up until the sequel comes out, but when I look back to when it first released, I was having such a great time that I wanted to give it a 4 out of 5, with the only problems just being the lack of a strong single-player campaign. But with all the updates that seem to ruin and kind of fix the game at times, I don't think I can anymore. This game is a guilty pleasure that's soon to be replaced. But even so, I had a good run. I've probably done better in this than any other first-person shooter game out there, for whatever that's worth. Considering that there are times you can get the game for about $10, yeah, I can easily recommend it for that price. A 3 out of 5. Solid rental, buy it cheap. The script for this review had to be changed so many times, not just to make the video flow better or to make a correction, but because of all the changes of the game itself. Which is why I didn't go into as much detail as I normally would. Though I think in the future reviews, I'm going to start cutting back on stuff that you're going to learn just by simply playing the game. One big improvement I've noticed in this game is the tow cable. It's way better than the previous games, and I used to wonder why there's only one walker on indoor as opposed to the others that have two. Then I realized what had to be the answer. I can't see a snowspeeder flying around here, so to make it a little fair for not having that, only one AT-AT. At least I think that's the reason. I was originally going to make a greedy joke near the start of the video, and there's still some truth to that, but after being able to try some of the DLC stuff for free on special occasions, and some special weapons and maps were added for free, which was way more than I'd ever thought they'd do, I'll just save that joke for another day. Following from that note, let me just say that I thought 9 Nub and Greedo were terrible additions, as they felt like a skin change to the species you could already be. But I was glad to see Lando and the other bounty hunters show up, though I do wish Greedo was IG-88, and they should have just gone all the way and instead of the Pancake Kid, give us Admiral Akbar with an emote saying, "It's a trap!" Don't tell me you wouldn't have liked that. Just remember guys, before the Battlefront series, the best way to experience a full-blown Star Wars battle from the movies was this.
Ewok bombers, take cover! Watch out, they've got traps! Send in more support! And here comes a giant fish!
And on today's video plug, I will plug Callum Dory's favorite Zelda items list since he's going to create a new channel. Not much I can say for improvements, because the thing I hate most is the low view count. So enjoy the video, and while you do, I'll be working on another video, most likely the 10 characters you want in Smash for the Switch. Later everyone!